2 days before his wedding, Marcus Webb stood outside his future mother-in-law's kitchen window, a small velvet box pressing into his palm. Inside was a diamond ring, modest, 1/3 carat, but flawless. He'd saved 11 months for it, skipping lunches, working double shifts at Henderson's Auto Repair. Tonight, after dinner, he'd surprise Cassandra with this second ring, a promise that even a mechanic could give her something beautiful. The October air in Denver carried the smell of burning leaves. Marcus stepped toward the back door, rehearsing words he'd never been good at saying. Then Cassandra's voice drifted through the open window, light and careless. "Derek, baby, I can't wait to see you tonight." Marcus froze. No, he doesn't suspect anything. He's too busy playing Super Dad to notice what's right in front of him. The velvet box slipped from Marcus's fingers, tumbling down the concrete steps. He didn't bend to retrieve it. His legs had turned to stone. Cassandra laughed, that same musical sound she'd made when he proposed 6 months ago. I know. But what was I supposed to do? When we met, I thought he had potential. Turns out he's just a mechanic with a kid and no future. You're the upgrade I've been waiting for." The words hit Marcus like fists. A mechanic with a kid and no future. An upgrade. He'd given this woman 18 months of his life, rearranged his entire world around her schedule, her preferences, her vision of their future together. And through it all, he'd made sure his son came first. Noah was only 5, but he'd already lost his mother to a car accident 3 years ago. Marcus had refused to let him lose anything else. He didn't confront Cassandra that night. Couldn't. The betrayal sat in his chest like a stone he couldn't swallow. He drove home in silence, the city lights of Denver blurring past his windshield. At the apartment, he checked on Noah, asleep in his dinosaur pajamas, clutching a plastic velociraptor, and then sat alone in the dark living room until dawn painted the windows gray. 18 months. Marcus replayed every moment. Meeting Cassandra at the coffee shop near the garage, her smile as she'd asked what he did for a living, the way she'd said she admired how devoted he was to his son. She'd told him Noah deserved a mother again. Marcus had believed her. He'd believed all of it. Now he understood. She'd been auditioning him, measuring his worth, and he'd failed some invisible test. Not enough money, not enough ambition, just a 35-year-old man who fixed cars and came home smelling like motor oil. 2 days later, Cassandra made her choice public. The engagement party was supposed to celebrate their upcoming wedding. Both families had gathered at the Mile High Club, a rented venue with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. 120 guests filled the space, drinking champagne, making small talk beneath string lights that cast everything in warm gold. Marcus stood near the entrance in his only suit, the fabric pulling slightly across his shoulders. He'd bought it 8 years ago for Sarah's funeral and hadn't needed it since. Noah clung to his hand, wide-eyed at the crowd. The boy wore a miniature vest that Marcus had found at a thrift store, his hair combed back with water that was already drying into its usual cowlick. "Daddy, there's so many people." Marcus squeezed his son's hand. "It's okay, buddy. We'll stick together." Jake, Marcus's best friend and fellow mechanic, appeared with 2 beers. He pressed one into Marcus's free hand. "Relax, man. This is supposed to be a celebration." Marcus tried to smile. Across the room, Cassandra held court in a red dress that probably cost more than his monthly rent. She looked beautiful. She always did. And for 18 months, Marcus had convinced himself that somehow, Impossibly, she'd chosen him. At 7:30, Cassandra clinked her champagne glass. The room quieted. She stood in the center, radiant under the lights, and Marcus felt a swell of pride that lasted exactly 3 seconds. "Thank you all for coming tonight, but I have something important to share." The smile on her face wasn't nervous. It was triumphant. "I've realized that I deserve more than settling. I deserve a man who can actually provide the life I want." The words landed like a slap. Marcus felt every eye in the room turn toward him. Heat crawled up his neck. Marcus is a good person, but good isn't enough. I need someone with ambition, someone with real success. She extended her hand toward the entrance, where a man Marcus had never seen before stepped through the crowd like he owned it. Tall, polished, wearing a suit that probably cost more than Marcus made in a month. "Everyone, I'd like you to meet Derek Ashford, my new partner, and the man I should have been with from the start." Derek wrapped his arm around Cassandra's waist, his smile easy and practiced. "Sorry for the drama, folks, but when you find the one, you don't let anything stand in your way." The room erupted in whispers. Marcus couldn't move. He felt the humiliation pressing down on his chest, making it hard to breathe. Some guests looked at him with pity. Others barely hid their amusement. This was entertainment for them, a spectacle. But what broke Marcus, what shattered him completely, was the small hand suddenly gripping his fingers tighter. Noah had wandered from the back room where the children were supposed to be playing. Now he stood beside his father, confusion and fear written across his face as he watched the adults point and murmur. "Daddy?" The boy's voice was barely a whisper. "Why is everyone looking at us?" Marcus knelt immediately, pulling Noah close, shielding him from the crowd. His son's body trembled against his chest. "It's okay, buddy. Everything's okay." But nothing was okay, and Marcus knew the fallout was just beginning. He stood, lifting Noah into his arms, and walked toward the exit. He didn't look at Cassandra, didn't acknowledge Derek, just carried his son through the silent crowd and out into the cold October night. Behind him, the party resumed. Laughter and music spilled into the parking lot. Marcus buckled Noah into the car seat, his hands shaking so badly he could barely work the straps. "Where's Miss Cassie?" Noah asked. Marcus closed his eyes. "She's not coming with us, son." "Why not?" "Because she never loved us. Because we weren't enough. Because the world is cruel and your father is a fool." "Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes," Marcus said instead. "But you and me, we're going to be just fine." The drive home was silent. Noah fell asleep before they reached Capitol Hill, his head lolling against the car seat. Marcus carried him upstairs to their apartment, a 2-bedroom, 950 square feet, nothing special, but clean and safe. He tucked Noah into bed, then sat on the edge of the mattress, watching his son sleep. A good man doesn't measure his worth by the money in his bank account. He measures it by how he treats his child when no one's watching. Marcus had told himself that 1,000 times since Sarah died. But tonight, Cassandra's words echoed louder. Just a mechanic with a kid and no future. The week after the engagement party, the scandal spread through their community like wildfire. Denver wasn't that big. People talked. At Henderson's auto repair, Marcus felt the stares. His co-workers tried to act normal, but he heard the whispers during breaks. "Did you hear? Marcus got dumped for some rich investor guy." Right before the wedding, too. Brutal. Man, I'd never show my face again. Marcus kept his head down, focusing on the work. An engine rebuild didn't care about his humiliation. A transmission didn't judge. There was comfort in the logic of machines. Diagnose the problem, fix it, move on. But at Noah's preschool, the damage cut deeper. Other parents avoided Marcus during pickup. One mother actually crossed to the other side of the hallway when she saw him coming. The teachers were kind, overly so, which somehow made it worse. Noah started asking questions Marcus didn't know how to answer. Why doesn't Miss Cassandra come over anymore? Why did Daddy's friend Billy say something mean about us? Did I do something bad? That last one nearly destroyed Marcus. He pulled Noah into his lap, held him tight. You didn't do anything wrong, son. You're the best boy in the whole world. This isn't your fault. None of it. But it felt like a lie. Because Marcus had brought Cassandra into their lives, he'd let Noah get attached. He'd promised his son that maybe, just maybe, they could be a normal family again. And now that promise was ashes. The hardest part wasn't the humiliation Marcus suffered himself. It was watching his son absorb it. Noah became quieter, clingier. He started having nightmares again, something that hadn't happened in over a year. Marcus would wake at 2 a.m. to find Noah standing in his doorway, tears on his cheeks. I dreamed you left, like Mommy. Every time, Marcus would carry him back to bed, lie beside him until sleep came. And every time, he felt the weight of his failure pressing down. He was supposed to protect this child. Instead, he'd exposed him to more pain. On a Tuesday evening, 3 weeks after the engagement party, someone knocked on Marcus's apartment door. He'd just put Noah to bed after reading the same dinosaur book 4 times. Exhausted, he assumed it was a neighbor or maybe a delivery. He opened the door expecting anything except the woman standing on his threshold. Elena Morgan, Cassandra's aunt, the quiet one who sat in corners at family gatherings, speaking only when spoken to. Marcus had barely exchanged more than polite greetings with her over the past 18 months. She was older than Cassandra by 14 years, though something about her seemed even more distant, not aged, but guarded. She dressed simply, no jewelry, no makeup, nothing that demanded notice. The Morgan family treated her as an afterthought, the unmarried aunt who had somehow failed to make anything of herself. May I come in? Her voice was calm, measured. Marcus stepped aside, too surprised to refuse. Elena sat on his worn couch, looking around the small apartment without judgment. Then she looked directly at him, and Marcus realized her eyes were intelligent and sharp in a way he'd never noticed before. I have a proposition. One that could help us both. Marcus crossed his arms, suspicion rising. What kind of proposition? Marriage. The word hung in the air between them. Marcus almost laughed. You can't be serious. Elena's expression didn't waver. I'm completely serious. The scandal is destroying your reputation and hurting your son. My family is pressuring me to marry before I become even more of an embarrassment to them. A union between us solves both problems. Marcus shook his head. I'm not marrying someone just to save face. It's not about your face. It's about Noah. Elena leaned forward slightly. Right now, he's the child of the man who got publicly humiliated by his fiancée. That story will follow him. Kids are cruel. Parents are crueler. But if you move forward, if you show the world that you've moved on, that you chose someone else, the narrative changes. You're no longer the victim. You're the man who found something better. Marcus stared at her. The logic was cold, almost clinical. But underneath the calculation, he heard something else, something that sounded almost like understanding. "And what do you get out of this?" Elena's gaze flickered just for a moment. "I have my reasons. Reasons I'd rather not explain. But I can promise you this. I won't interfere with your life. I won't try to replace anyone. I just need a marriage that keeps certain people off my back." "That's not an answer." "It's the only one I'm willing to give." Marcus should have said no. Every instinct told him this was insane. Marrying a woman he barely knew, a woman connected to the person who had just destroyed him. But then he thought about Noah, about the whispers that would follow his son for years, about the pity that would shape how people saw him before he ever had a chance to define himself. If a father's worth is measured by what he's willing to sacrifice for his child, then maybe this was the sacrifice required. "If I agree, there are rules. Noah comes first, always. You don't make decisions about him without me. And if this arrangement stops working, we end it clean. No drama, no games." Elena nodded. "Agreed. And I need to know one thing." Marcus held her gaze. "Do you actually want this? Or is someone forcing you into it?" For the first time, something shifted in Elena's expression. Not quite vulnerability, but close. "No one forces me to do anything. I'm choosing this, just like you are." 3 weeks later, they stood in the Denver County Courthouse and signed the papers. No guests, no fanfare, no white dress. Just two people entering a contract neither fully understood. The ceremony took 10 minutes. A judge read the vows. Marcus and Elena repeated words that felt hollow in his mouth. When the judge said they could kiss, there was an awkward pause. They didn't. Just shook hands like closing a business deal. Noah stood between them in a miniature vest, serious as a tiny adult. Afterward, the boy tugged on Marcus's hand. "Daddy, is Miss Elena going to live with us now?" Marcus looked at Elena. She knelt down to Noah's eye level, her voice gentle. "I'll try my best to be a good friend to you and your daddy. Is that okay?" Noah nodded slowly, still processing. As they walked out of the courthouse into the afternoon sun, Marcus glanced at the woman who was now legally his wife. She walked beside him in silence, her face unreadable. He had no idea who she really was. He had no idea that the quiet, overlooked woman beside him controlled one of the largest investment firms in the city. And he had no idea that his decision to marry her would change everything, not just for him, but for everyone who had ever underestimated either of them. But as fate would have it, they didn't make it to the parking lot before the universe decided to test them. Cassandra and Derek stood on the courthouse steps, apparently filing some business paperwork. Cassandra's eyes went wide when she saw Marcus, Elena, and Noah emerging from the building. "Uncle Marcus?" she blinked. "Aunt Elena? What are you two—" Her gaze dropped to the papers in Marcus's hand. "You got married? This is a joke, right?" Derek smirked, looking Marcus up and down like he was evaluating a used car. "Wow. From rejecting the princess to settling for the old maid. Bold move, buddy." Marcus felt his hands curl into fists, but before he could respond, Elena stepped forward. Her posture changed, shoulders back, chin lifted. Her voice came out cold as winter steel. "Derek, I hear Ashford Development is seeking capital. The board at Meridian will be reviewing your application next week. I hope you've prepared thoroughly." Derek's smirk faltered. His face went pale. "You work at Meridian Capital?" Elena didn't answer. She took Marcus's arm and guided him toward the car, Noah trotting between them. Cassandra called after them, confused.
"Aunt Elena, what do you do at Meridian? I thought you were just—"
But Elena kept walking, her grip firm on Marcus's elbow. In the car, Marcus turned to her. "You work with Meridian Capital?" Elena's expression returned to neutral. "Remember our agreement. Don't ask about my work." Marcus gripped the steering wheel. He'd just married a woman who clearly had some connection to one of Denver's most powerful investment firms. But how deep did that connection go? And why was Derek Ashford suddenly terrified? The questions piled up, but Marcus swallowed them. He'd made a deal, and a man kept his word even when he didn't understand the game. Elena moved into Marcus's apartment the next day. She arrived with 2 suitcases of simple clothes, a box of books, and a laptop. That was it. Marcus had assumed she'd be moving from her own apartment somewhere in the city, maybe a modest studio befitting the quiet, unassuming woman everyone believed her to be.
"What about your place?" he asked as she set down her bags. "I terminated the lease." She offered no other explanation, and Marcus didn't push. Elena took the living room, insisting Marcus and Noah keep the bedrooms. Within a day, she'd organized the space into something neat and minimal, just a pull-out couch, a small desk, and a lamp. No photographs, no decorations, nothing personal. It was as if she'd learned to occupy space without leaving any trace of herself. They developed a routine built on careful distance. Elena woke at 5:30 every morning, made coffee, and left a cup outside Marcus's door before he got up. She was always dressed simply, blazer and slacks, professional but unremarkable, and she left the apartment by 6:45 in a 2019 Toyota Camry that had seen better days. Marcus rose at 6:30, got Noah ready for preschool, and drove him to Little Learners Academy before heading to Henderson's auto repair by 8. He worked his usual shifts, sometimes 10, 11 hours if they were understaffed, and came home exhausted but determined to spend time with his son. Elena would return around 6:30 in the evening, sometimes as late as 8 or 9. She'd attempt to cook dinner, but more often than not, the results were disasters. Burnt pasta, rice that came out like glue, chicken so dry it could double as sandpaper. Marcus found himself teaching her the basics: how much milk and butter to add to macaroni and cheese, the right heat for scrambled eggs, the timing for grilled cheese sandwiches that didn't turn to charcoal. They'd eat together in near silence, exchanging only necessary words about schedules and groceries. Noah filled the void with his chatter about dinosaurs and his friends at school. Elena listened, a small smile occasionally touching her lips, but she kept her distance from the boy, as if afraid that getting too close would break some unspoken rule of their arrangement. Marcus noticed small things. Elena always rinsed her dishes immediately, a habit of someone used to living alone. She read business journals at night, her brow furrowed in concentration. She never asked Marcus about his day, but sometimes he'd catch her watching him when he played with Noah on the living room floor, something unreadable in her expression. And there were other things. Stranger things. The electric bill that month had been paid online before Marcus could get to it. When he asked Elena about it, she simply said she'd taken care of it. Groceries appeared in the refrigerator on Sundays: organic vegetables, fresh fruit, quality cuts of meat. Elena claimed she'd found sales at the supermarket, but Marcus recognized Whole Foods packaging, not the discount brands from King Soopers. He wanted to ask, wanted to push, but the wall between them felt too high to climb. 3 weeks into the marriage, that wall began to crack. Marcus had picked up an extra shift, covering for a coworker whose wife had gone into labor. He didn't get home until 11 at night, exhausted and smelling like engine grease. The apartment was dark except for a soft glow coming from Noah's room. Marcus walked toward it, expecting to find his son asleep with the nightlight on. Instead, he found Elena sitting on the edge of Noah's bed, speaking softly. The boy was curled under his blanket, eyes heavy but still open, listening. "And the little lion walked and walked," Elena was saying, her voice barely above a whisper. "He was scared because the jungle was so big and he was so small. But he kept going because he remembered what his father told him." Noah's small voice interrupted. "What did his father tell him?" "That being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you keep walking even when you are. Because somewhere, someone is waiting for you. And they'll always wait, no matter how long it takes." Noah's eyes fluttered closed. His small hand was wrapped around Elena's fingers, holding on even as sleep pulled him under. Elena sat there for another minute, making sure he was truly asleep before gently pulling her hand free. When she turned and saw Marcus watching from the doorway, something flickered across her face. Embarrassment, maybe, or the vulnerability of being caught in an unguarded moment. "He had a nightmare," she explained quietly. "I heard him crying. I hope that was okay." Marcus nodded slowly, his throat tight. It was more than okay. For the first time since they'd signed the papers, Marcus looked at Elena and saw something beyond the arrangement. He saw a woman who had sat with his son in the dark, asking nothing in return, simply because a child needed comfort. It wasn't much, but it was a beginning. The weeks that followed brought small changes. Elena started asking Noah about his favorite things, learning that he was obsessed with dinosaurs and that the only food he would eat without complaint was macaroni and cheese. One afternoon, Marcus came home early to find her in the kitchen, surrounded by cheese powder and boiling water, her phone propped up against the salt shaker as she watched a tutorial video. "This looked easier online," she admitted, frustration tightening her voice. Marcus couldn't help but smile. He showed her the right amount of milk and butter, the trick to getting the cheese sauce smooth. They stood side by side at the stove, and for a moment, it almost felt like something real. That night, Noah devoured the meal, declaring it pretty good. Coming from a 5-year-old food critic, that was high praise. Elena's face softened into something that might have been pride. Then one evening, everything shifted. Noah was playing with his toy dinosaurs in the living room while Marcus washed dishes and Elena read nearby. The boy suddenly ran up to her, clutching a plastic velociraptor. "Ellie, look! This one's my favorite!" It took Marcus a moment to register what had happened. Noah had called her Ellie. Not Miss Elena, not the lady. A name. A term of familiarity. A door opening that the boy had chosen to open himself. Elena looked stunned. Her eyes met Marcus's across the room, and for an instant, her careful composure cracked. There was something raw underneath, something that looked almost like hope. "He's a very handsome velociraptor," she told Noah seriously. "What's his name?" "Rex. He's the bravest one." From that night on, Noah called her Ellie, and Marcus noticed that Elena smiled more often, though always in small, quiet ways, as if she was still learning how. But the outside world refused to let them forget where they'd come from. 6 weeks into the marriage, they attended a Morgan family birthday party. It was unavoidable. Diane Morgan, Cassandra's mother, had made it clear that absence would be noted and judged. Marcus dressed Noah in his vest and drove them to the sprawling house in Cherry Hills Village, a neighborhood where lawns were measured in acres and cars cost more than his annual salary. The moment they walked in, Marcus felt the stares. Diane Morgan held court in the living room,
surrounded by relatives who looked at Elena with barely concealed disdain and at Marcus with open curiosity. "Elena, you actually came." Diane's smile was sharp as a knife. "And you brought your husband." She said the word like it was a joke. "Diane, thank you for inviting us." Elena's voice was steady, but Marcus felt the tension in her shoulders. "Well, we're all family now, aren't we?" Diane's gaze slid to Marcus. "Though I must say, I never expected you to end up with a mechanic." "But I suppose at your age, options are limited." Marcus felt his jaw tighten. Beside him, Noah pressed closer, sensing the hostility. An older man, Robert Morgan, Elena's uncle, joined the conversation. "Marcus, is it? What do you do again?" "I manage Henderson's auto repair." Robert laughed, the sound condescending. "A grease monkey. How practical. Elena, you really did scrape the bottom of the barrel this time. But I suppose beggars can't be choosers." The room had gone quiet, other guests pretending not to listen while hanging on every word. Before Marcus could respond, Elena spoke. Her voice was different, colder, harder, carrying an authority Marcus had never heard before. "Uncle Robert, Marcus is twice the man you'll ever be. While you bankrupted 3 businesses and owe Bank of America over $200,000, he's built a stable life with his own hands. I know exactly who I chose." The silence that followed was absolute. Jaws dropped. Diane Morgan looked like she'd been slapped. This was the quiet, overlooked Elena they'd dismissed for years, and she'd just eviscerated Robert in front of 20 witnesses. Robert's face turned purple, but before he could respond, Cassandra appeared with Derek at her side. She looked Marcus up and down, her expression a mixture of pity and amusement. "Marcus, you look tired. Marriage not treating you well?" "I'm fine, Cassandra." She glanced at Elena, her smile turning cruel. "I have to say, I never expected you to end up with my aunt, of all people. But I guess when you're running out of options, you take what you can get." Marcus felt his hands curl into fists at his sides, but Elena stepped forward before he could respond, her voice calm, almost pleasant. "Cassandra, your dress is lovely. Is it from last season's collection? I thought I recognized it from the clearance rack." Cassandra's smile faltered. She opened her mouth to retort, but Derek was already pulling her away toward the bar, his face tight with anger. Marcus stared at Elena. It was the first time he'd ever seen her fight back. "You didn't have to do that," he said quietly. Elena shrugged. "Yes, I did." Something shifted between them in that moment. Not love, not yet, but the beginning of partnership. The sense that they were no longer 2 strangers sharing space, but 2 people who had chosen to stand on the same side. The drive home was quiet. Noah fell asleep in his car seat, exhausted from the tension he didn't fully understand. Marcus glanced at Elena in the passenger seat, her profile lit by passing streetlights. "Thank you," he said, "for what you said back there." Elena didn't look at him. "They've treated me like garbage for 12 years. I'm tired of it, and I won't let them do the same to you or Noah." Marcus wanted to ask why she'd endured it for so long, why she'd let them dismiss her, mock her, treat her like she'd failed at life. But the answers felt too personal, too close to the secrets she was keeping. Instead, he focused on the road and let the silence settle between them, a silence that felt less empty than before. Back at the apartment, Marcus carried Noah inside and tucked him into bed. When he returned to the living room, Elena was standing at the window, looking out at the Denver skyline. "My family has always been like that," she said without turning. They measure worth by money and status. When I didn't marry young, when I didn't follow the expected path, I became the cautionary tale, the spinster, the failure. Marcus joined her at the window. You're not a failure. Elena's laugh was bitter. They don't see it that way. To them, I'm the woman who couldn't catch a husband, couldn't build a life. They don't know. She stopped abruptly, as if catching herself before revealing too much.
Don't know what? Elena turned to face him, and in her eyes, Marcus saw a depth of pain he'd never noticed before. It doesn't matter. The point is, you and Noah deserve better than their judgment. And I'm tired of pretending I don't. Marcus studied her face, the lines around her eyes that spoke of sleepless nights, the set of her jaw that suggested years of holding back words. For the first time, he wondered if maybe Elena's secrets weren't about hiding wealth or status. Maybe they were about hiding wounds. For what it's worth, he said, I'm glad you're here. With us. Elena's expression softened. So am I. That night, as Marcus lay in bed, he replayed the evening. Elena defending him. Elena standing up to her family. Elena sitting on his couch right now, reading by lamplight. A quiet presence that had somehow become essential to the fragile peace of their home. He thought about Cassandra's parting words. Wake up, Marcus. She's hiding something. She was right. Elena was definitely hiding something. But for the first time, Marcus wondered if maybe, just maybe, whatever she was hiding wasn't meant to hurt him. Maybe it was meant to protect herself. And maybe, if he was patient enough, she'd eventually trust him with the truth. The Monday after the Morgan family party, Marcus arrived at Henderson's auto repair to find old man Henderson waiting for him in the cramped office that smelled of burnt coffee and decades of paperwork. Henderson's weathered face carried an expression Marcus couldn't read. Part confusion, part relief. Maybe a touch of something that looked like hope. Marcus, shut the door. We need to talk. Marcus's stomach dropped. In 8 years, Henderson had never asked him to shut the door unless someone was getting fired or the business was in trouble. Given the gray in Henderson's hair and the way his children had been circling like vultures, Marcus had prepared himself for the inevitable. The shop would be sold. New owners would bring their own people. He'd be unemployed by Christmas. I know what you're going to say. Henderson held up a weathered hand. Hold on. Let me get it out first. He rubbed his face, exhaustion written in every line. The shop's been sold. Papers signed this morning. Marcus felt the floor tilt beneath him. Noah's preschool tuition, rent, groceries, everything he'd scraped together, everything he'd built since Sarah died. Gone. But here's the strange part. The buyer isn't Midland Automotive like we thought. Some investment firm called Eagle Crest Holdings swooped in last week, outbid Midland by 20%. And get this, they've got conditions. Every current employee keeps their position. Everyone gets an 8% raise effective immediately. They want me to stay on as a paid advisor. Marcus blinked, trying to process the words. That doesn't make sense. Who pays more to keep the existing staff? That's what I said. My lawyer looked into it. Eagle Crest is a shell company, registered in Delaware. Completely legal, but the actual buyer's identity is protected. They're putting in $200,000 for equipment upgrades too. New lifts, diagnostic computers, the works. Henderson leaned back in his chair, which creaked under his weight. In 30 years, I've never seen anything like it. Someone just saved this shop and everyone in it, and they don't want credit. Marcus's mind raced. Anonymous buyers didn't spend extra money out of kindness. There was always a motive, always an angle. And the timing, 3 months after he'd married Elena, felt too convenient to be coincidence. That evening, he came home to find Elena at the stove, attempting what looked like stir-fry. Vegetables were scattered across the counter in varying states of preparation. The smell of burning garlic filled the apartment. The shop got sold today. Marcus kept his voice neutral, watching her reaction. Elena's hand paused mid-stir.
Did you keep your job?
Yeah, new owner is keeping everyone on, actually giving us raises. That's good news. Her tone was carefully measured, revealing nothing. It's strange news. The buyer's anonymous. Some company called Eagle Crest Holdings. Paid way more than market value just to keep the staff employed. You ever heard of them? Elena returned her attention to the pan where the vegetables were starting to char. Can't say I have. Marcus moved closer, lowering his voice so Noah wouldn't hear from his room. Elena, 2 weeks ago I heard you on the phone talking about Henderson's. You mentioned the deal, escrow accounts. If you had something to do with this, I need to know. She set down the spatula and turned to face him. Her eyes held something he couldn't quite identify. Defiance mixed with fear, maybe, or resignation. If I did, what would you do about it? The question hung between them like a challenge. I don't know.
But a partnership means we tell each other the truth. Elena's expression softened, but she didn't confirm or deny anything.
Marcus, I can't talk about my work. That was our agreement. But I promise, everything I do because I care about you and Noah. Not to control you, not to make you feel less than. Can you trust that? Marcus wanted to push harder, demand real answers. But Noah appeared in the doorway clutching his velociraptor, asking if dinner was ready, and the moment passed. They ate the burnt stir-fry in silence. That night, after Elena had retreated to her makeshift room and Noah was asleep, Marcus sat at his laptop and searched for Eagle Crest Holdings. The results were minimal. A registered agent in Delaware, a post office box, nothing substantial. He cross-referenced with Meridian Capital and found no obvious connections. But the seed of suspicion had been planted. Elena wasn't just working for Meridian Capital. She had access, influence, resources that went far beyond what an administrative assistant or even a mid-level manager would possess. And she was using those resources on him. The question was why. 2 weeks later, the answer started to come into focus, though not in the way Marcus expected. Cassandra showed up at Henderson's on a gray November afternoon, her designer coat inappropriate for a garage filled with grease and metal shavings. The mechanics stopped working, conversations dying as she picked her way across the concrete floor in heels that clicked like gunshots. Marcus was under a Ford F-150, replacing brake pads, when Jake whistled low. "Ro, you've got a visitor." And she looks pissed. Marcus rolled out from under the truck, wiping his hands on a rag. Cassandra stood 5 feet away, her perfect makeup not quite hiding the exhaustion beneath. "We need to talk." "Nothing to talk about." "Please, Marcus, 5 minutes." Against his better judgment, Marcus led her to the small break room. Cassandra sat on the edge of a folding chair like she was afraid it might stain her clothes. "Derek's business is falling apart. 2 condo projects stopped because he lost investors. Banks won't lend him more money. He's drowning, and I just found out he's been lying about everything. The penthouse? Leased. The cars? Leased. He's got maybe $1 million left, and it's disappearing fast." Marcus crossed his arms, unmoved. "Why are you telling me this?" Cassandra's eyes filled with tears, real ones for once. "Because I made a mistake. You were good to me,
And I threw it away for money that doesn't even exist. Derek's not the man he pretended to be. You are.
So now that the money's gone, you want to come back.
I know I don't deserve forgiveness. But Marcus, we had something real. We could try again.
No.
The word came out harder than Marcus intended, but he didn't soften it.
You destroyed what we had when you walked away. I'm not your backup plan. I'm not your safety net. I've moved on. Cassandra's expression shifted from pleading to bitter. Moved on? To Aunt Elena? She laughed, the sound cruel. Wake up, Marcus. A 42-year-old woman who's never been married suddenly wants you? She's hiding something. I'd bet everything she's using you for something. Marcus felt his jaw tighten. Elena's been more honest with me in 3 months than you were in 18. Now get out. Cassandra stood, her face hardening. Fine, but don't say I didn't warn you. My aunt has secrets, Marcus. Big ones. And when you find out what they are, you're going to wish you'd listened. She left, her heels echoing across the garage. Marcus returned to the Ford, but his hands shook as he picked up his tools. Cassandra's words burrowed into his brain like splinters. That evening, curiosity got the better of him. After Noah went to bed, Marcus pulled out his phone and searched for Adam Castellano, the name he'd heard Elena mention on one of her phone calls. The results made his blood run cold. Adam Castellano, Chief Operating Officer at Meridian Capital, previously worked at Goldman Sachs, joined Meridian Capital 10 years ago. But it was an older article buried on the 3rd page of results that stopped Marcus's breath. Elena Morgan, newly appointed CEO of Meridian Capital, announces the hiring of Adam Castellano as Chief Operating Officer. The move comes 3 years after the pair's broken engagement. Marcus read the paragraph 5 times, trying to make sense of it. Elena wasn't an employee at Meridian Capital. She was the CEO. And Adam Castellano, the man she spoke with regularly, the man whose calls she took at odd hours, wasn't just a colleague. He was her ex-fiancé. Everything clicked into place with sickening clarity. The mysterious money, the way Derek had gone pale when she mentioned Meridian's board, the careful way she avoided questions about work. Elena Morgan wasn't hiding a modest career in finance. She was a billionaire, and she'd been lying to him from the beginning. Marcus's first instinct was to confront her immediately, storm into the living room, demand explanations, maybe break a few things. But Noah was asleep down the hall, and waking him would mean questions Marcus couldn't answer. So he sat in the dark, his phone screen casting blue light on his face, and spiraled through every interaction with Elena, recontextualizing everything. The paid electric bill, the organic groceries, the mysterious buyer who saved Henderson's. It had all been her. And she'd let him think they were equals. Let him believe she was just another person struggling to get by. The humiliation burned worse than Cassandra's betrayal, because at least with Cassandra, he'd known where he stood. With Elena, he'd been living in a lie so complete, he'd never even questioned it. Sleep didn't come that night. Marcus lay in bed watching shadows move across the ceiling, anger and hurt warring in his chest. By morning, he'd built a wall around himself, cold, distant, impenetrable. Elena noticed immediately at breakfast. Her cheerful greeting died when she saw his face. Marcus, is something wrong? We'll talk later, after Noah's at school. He drove their son to Little Learners Academy in silence, dropped him off with a forced smile, then sat in the parking lot for 10 minutes
gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles went white. A man's strength isn't measured by how much weight he can lift, but by how much truth he can carry without breaking. Marcus had always believed that, but right now, the truth felt like it might crush him. He didn't go to work. Instead, he drove to Cherry Creek Reservoir, parked by the water, and called Jake.
Hey man, what's up? I need you to be honest with me. Have you noticed anything strange about Elena? Anything at all? Jake paused. Strange how? Just answer the question. I mean, she seems nice. Good with Noah. Why? Marcus's laugh was bitter. Because she's a billionaire, Jake. CEO of Meridian Capital. Net worth probably north of $500 million. And she's been living in my 900-square-foot apartment, pretending to be nobody. The silence on the other end stretched for several seconds. Holy shit. Yeah. Bro, are you sure? Maybe it's someone with the same name. I saw the articles. Pictures of her at charity galas, business conferences. It's her. She's been lying this whole time. Jake exhaled slowly. Okay, but why would she lie? I mean, if she's really that rich, why marry you? No offense. That's the question, isn't it? Marcus watched a group of geese land on the reservoir, their wings cutting through the gray water. Maybe Cassandra was right. Maybe I'm just a project. The poor mechanic she can save to feel better about herself. Or worse, maybe it's some kind of tax scheme. Marry down to look relatable for her investors. Marcus, man. I've seen the way she looks at you. At Noah. That's not someone running a con. Then why lie? Jake didn't have an answer for that. Marcus hung up and sat by the water until afternoon shadows stretched long across the parking lot. He thought about driving to Meridian Capital's offices, confronting Elena in front of her employees, making her explain in a place where she couldn't hide. But that felt petty, vindictive, and it would accomplish nothing except making himself look like a fool. Finally, as the sun began to set, he drove home. Elena was pacing in the living room when he walked in. Her laptop sat open on the coffee table, displaying what looked like financial spreadsheets. She closed it quickly when she heard the door. Where were you? I've been calling. I know. Marcus dropped his keys on the counter, the metal clanging louder than necessary. Know what? I know who you are, Elena. Or should I call you Ms. Morgan? CEO Morgan? How do billionaires prefer to be addressed? The color drained from Elena's face. Marcus, don't. Just don't. His voice cracked despite his efforts to stay calm. Adam Castellano, Meridian Capital, Forbes articles about the silent billionaire of Denver. I found it all. Every piece of the lie you've been living. Elena sank onto the couch, her carefully constructed walls crumbling. I was going to tell you. When? After another 3 months? A year? Never? I didn't know how. I wanted to, but every time I tried, I couldn't find the words. Marcus laughed, the sound hollow. You had plenty of words when you proposed this arrangement. You just didn't have any honest ones. Elena's eyes filled with tears, but Marcus felt no satisfaction in it. Do you have any idea what this feels like? Finding out your wife is worth more money than I'll make in 10 lifetimes? Realizing that every struggle I've had, every bill, every worry, you could have solved with pocket change? I didn't want to solve them. I wanted to be your partner, not your rescue. Then you should have been honest from the start. The shout echoed through the apartment. Noah's door opened down the hall, and the boy appeared in his pajamas, face crumpled with worry. Daddy, why are you yelling? Marcus closed his eyes, forcing his breathing to slow. Elena moved toward Noah, but Marcus stepped between them. Go back to bed, son. Everything's fine. But you're mad. Noah, bed. Now. The boy's lip trembled, but he obeyed, retreating to his room and closing the door softly. The click of the latch felt like a condemnation. Marcus turned back to Elena, lowering his voice but losing none of its intensity.
You want to know the worst part? I was starting to care about you. Not the idea of you, not the arrangement, you. And now, I don't even know who you are. Elena wiped her eyes, mascara smudging. I'm the same person who sat with Noah during his nightmares, who burned dinner trying to learn your favorite foods, who stood up to my family because they disrespected you. That's who I am, Marcus. The money doesn't change that.
The money changes everything. He grabbed his jacket from the hook by the door.
Where are you going?
Out. I can't be here right now. Marcus left before she could respond, taking the stairs 2 at a time down to the parking lot. He drove aimlessly through Denver's streets, past the glowing high-rises downtown, through neighborhoods where houses cost more than Henderson's entire business. Somewhere in one of these buildings, Elena had an office, a staff, power that could reshape lives with a single decision, and she'd chosen to share his cramped apartment, eating burnt macaroni, pretending to be ordinary. Why? The question haunted him as he pulled into a 24-hour diner on Colfax Avenue and ordered coffee he didn't drink. Around him, the late-night crowd moved through their own dramas, truckers grabbing meals between routes, college students studying for exams, insomniacs seeking refuge from empty apartments. Marcus pulled out his phone and searched for more articles about Elena Morgan. There were dozens. Features in the Wall Street Journal, Forbes, Bloomberg, photos of her at charity events, always in designer clothes that looked nothing like the simple outfits she wore at home. In one picture, she stood beside a man Marcus recognized, Adam Castellano, younger, his arm around her shoulders in a way that spoke of intimacy. The caption read, Morgan and Castellano, once engaged, maintain a professional relationship at Meridian Capital. So she worked with the man who'd broken her heart. That took either incredible strength or masochistic dedication. Marcus didn't know which, and the uncertainty ate at him. His phone buzzed, a text from Elena. Please come home. We need to talk. I'll tell you everything. Marcus stared at the message for a long time. Part of him wanted to throw the phone across the diner, watch it shatter against the far wall. Another part, smaller but persistent, remembered Noah's face when he'd yelled. His son didn't need more instability, more adults falling apart around him. With effort that felt physical, Marcus typed back, Give me an hour. He paid for the untouched coffee and drove to the elementary school playground 3 blocks from their apartment. The swings creaked in the November wind, chains squeaking against metal frames. Marcus sat on one of the benches where he'd brought Noah countless times, watching the empty slides glow under streetlights. A father's job is to protect his child from the chaos of the world, to build walls strong enough to keep the darkness out. Marcus had failed Sarah when the drunk driver crossed the center line. He'd failed Noah when Cassandra walked away. And now, discovering Elena's deception felt like another failure. Bringing someone into their lives who couldn't be trusted, who'd built a relationship on foundations of sand. But a quieter voice in his head pointed out the truth he didn't want to acknowledge. Elena had never hurt them. She'd been kind to Noah, patient with Marcus, generous in ways he'd only now begun to understand. If she'd wanted to use them, wouldn't she have demanded something by now? Wouldn't there be strings, obligations, debts to repay? Instead, she'd asked for nothing except their presence. Maybe that was the most expensive thing she'd ever tried to buy. Marcus checked his watch. 53 minutes since his text. Close enough. He walked back to the apartment, each step heavier than the last. Elena was sitting on the couch where he'd left her, though she'd changed into sweatpants and an old t-shirt. Her real clothes, not the costume she wore to work. Her laptop was gone. In its place sat a bottle of whiskey and 2 glasses. "I don't usually drink," she began, "but tonight seems like an exception." Marcus sat in the chair across from her, maintaining distance. "Talk." Elena poured 2 fingers of whiskey into each glass, her hands surprisingly steady. "My father, George Morgan, built Meridian Capital from nothing. When he died 15 years ago, I inherited the company. I was 27, inexperienced, and terrified. Everyone expected me to fail." She took a sip, wincing at the burn. "Instead, I grew it. Turned $5 million into $8 billion in assets under management. Made Forbes' list of most powerful women in finance. Built an empire." Her laugh was bitter. "And lost myself in the process." Marcus didn't touch his glass. 12 years ago, I was engaged to Adam Castellano. He was brilliant, charming, everything I thought I wanted. But when Meridian started succeeding, really succeeding, he changed. Became resentful. Said he couldn't handle being Mr. Elena Morgan. The fights got worse. Then I found out he was sleeping with one of our analysts. Elena's voice remained flat, reciting facts without emotion. When I confronted him, you know what he said? "No one will ever love you for yourself. You're nothing without your money." And I believed him. I spent the next decade proving him right. She met Marcus's eyes for the first time since he'd sat down. I dated 4 men after Adam. Each one knew who I was. Each one tried to use me, for investments, for connections, for status. So I stopped dating. Stopped letting anyone close. Built walls so high I couldn't see over them anymore. Then why marry me? Because you didn't know. Because you treated me like a person, not a bank account. Because when I saw you with Noah at those family gatherings, the way you'd interrupt conversations to help him tie his shoes, the way you'd make sure he ate even when Cassandra ignored him, I thought maybe, just maybe, there were still good people in the world. Elena's composure finally cracked, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I know I should have told you, but every time I tried, I imagined your face changing. Saw you start to look at me differently, see dollar signs instead of Elena. And I was terrified, because for the first time in 12 years, I felt like someone actually saw me." The silence that followed was broken only by the hum of the refrigerator and distant traffic. Marcus picked up his glass, studied the amber liquid. "You bought Henderson's?" "Through a shell company, yes." "Why?" "Because I couldn't watch you lose the one thing that gave you pride. You work so hard, Marcus. You come home exhausted every night, hands torn up from tools and grease, and you still play dinosaurs with Noah until bedtime. You deserved security. That wasn't your choice to make." "I know." Marcus drained half the glass in one swallow, the whiskey burning a path down his throat. "Here's what kills me, Elena. I can handle being poor. I've been poor my whole life. But what I can't handle is pity. Being someone's charity case, someone's good deed." His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "I need to know. Did you marry me because you cared? Or because fixing broken things makes you feel better about yourself?" Elena set down her glass and moved to kneel in front of him, close enough that he could see the genuine anguish in her eyes.
I married you because watching you with Noah made me remember what love looked like. Because your hands might be rough, but they're gentle with your son. Because you never once looked at me like I was damaged goods when my family treated me like trash. You saw someone worth defending, worth standing beside. She reached for his hand, and he didn't pull away. I'm not trying to fix you, Marcus. I'm trying to learn from you. Because somewhere along the way to building an empire, I forgot how to build a life. The words settled between them, and Marcus felt something in his chest loosen. Not forgiveness, not yet, but maybe the beginning of understanding. I can't promise I'm going to be okay with this immediately. I don't expect you to be. And we need rules. Real ones. No more secrets. No more anonymous donations. If you want to help, we discuss it. As partners. Elena nodded. Agreed. Marcus finished his whiskey, the warmth spreading through his limbs. Tell me about Meridian. About your work. Everything. So she did. For the next 2 hours, Elena laid out her life in detail. The pressure of managing billions in assets. The board meetings where men twice her age questioned every decision. The satisfaction of funding startups that changed lives. She talked about Adam, about their complicated professional relationship, about how keeping him as COO was both punishment and protection. A daily reminder never to trust easily again. Marcus listened, asking questions, slowly building a picture of the woman he'd married. And somewhere around 3 a.m, as Elena described a disastrous investment in a tech company that taught her about due diligence, he realized he was smiling. What? You're a terrible cook, but you can analyze a company's financials in your sleep. Elena laughed, the sound genuine for the first time that night. Everyone has their strengths and their weaknesses. Marcus stood, offering his hand to help her up. It's late. We should sleep. Elena took his hand, and when she was on her feet, they stood close enough that Marcus could smell her shampoo, something floral and understated. Are we okay? Her voice was small, uncertain. We're getting there. She nodded, but didn't move away. Marcus, thank you for coming back, for listening. Yeah, well, someone's got to make sure you don't burn the house down trying to make breakfast. The joke was weak, but Elena smiled anyway, and as they separated to their respective spaces, Marcus to his bedroom, Elena to her converted living room, something had shifted. The wall between them had developed cracks. Whether those cracks would become bridges or breaking points remained to be seen. The morning after their 3-hour conversation, Marcus woke to find Elena already gone. No coffee outside his door, no note, just silence and the lingering smell of her perfume in the hallway. For a moment, panic gripped him. Maybe she'd left for good, unable to face him in daylight. Then he noticed her laptop bag still beside the couch, her reading glasses folded on the coffee table. She'd just gone to work early. Running, maybe, from the vulnerability of the night before. Marcus got Noah ready for school, moving through the familiar routine on autopilot. The boy chattered about a field trip to the aquarium, oblivious to the seismic shift in his father's world. At drop-off, one of the other mothers, Jennifer, whose son was in Noah's class, stopped Marcus in the parking lot. I heard you remarried. That's wonderful. Moving on after loss takes real courage. Marcus forced a smile, wondering what this woman would think if she knew his wife could buy the entire preschool with pocket change. Thanks. We're figuring it out. Well, Noah seems happy. That's what matters, right? The words followed Marcus to Henderson's, where he threw himself into work with an intensity that bordered on violence.
He rebuilt a transmission that didn't need rebuilding, rotated tires on every vehicle in the lot, organized the tool closet that had been chaos for 3 years. Jake watched from across the garage, concern written on his face, but didn't interrupt. Around 2 in the afternoon, Henderson called Marcus into the office again. "You're tearing through work like a man possessed. Everything okay?" "Fine." Henderson leaned back in his chair, studying Marcus with eyes that had seen 4 decades of people lying about being fine. "The new owners sent a representative yesterday. Nice lady. Said they're impressed with our operation. Want to expand our mobile repair services. Maybe open a second location." Marcus's hands tightened on the doorframe. "They say anything else?" "Asked about you specifically. Wanted to know if you'd be interested in a partnership down the line, once we've grown enough." Henderson's expression was unreadable. "Seems like they think you've got management potential beyond this shop." The implication was clear. Elena wasn't just saving his job, she was engineering his future. "I'm not interested." "Marcus," I said no. He left before Henderson could push further, escaping to the supply room where he could breathe without feeling like walls were closing in. The phone in his pocket buzzed. A text from Elena. "Working late tonight. Board meeting ran over. We'll try to be home by 9. Marcus stared at the message, anger and something softer warring in his chest. She was giving him space, letting him process. Or maybe she was avoiding the mess she'd created. Either way, he'd have to face Noah's questions about why Ellie wasn't at dinner again. He typed back, "Noah misses you at bedtime." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, "I miss him too. Tell him I'll read extra stories tomorrow night." That evening, Marcus picked up Noah from the after-school program and drove to a diner for dinner. Burgers and fries, comfort food that required no effort. Noah drew dinosaurs on his placemat while Marcus pushed French fries around his plate. "Daddy, is Ellie mad at us?" The question landed like a punch. "No, son. Why would you think that?" "She's been gone a lot, and you were yelling last night." Marcus set down his fork, guilt twisting in his stomach. Adults sometimes disagree about things, but Ellie's not mad at you. She could never be mad at you. "But she's mad at you?" Out of the mouths of 5-year-olds came truths Marcus wasn't ready to face. "It's complicated, buddy." "Is she going to leave like Miss Cassandra?" The fear in Noah's voice shattered something in Marcus's chest. His son had already lost his mother, already survived one woman walking away. Now he was bracing for another abandonment, building walls around his heart at an age when he should believe in forever. When love asks you to be brave, it's not asking you to fight or conquer. It's asking you to stay when running would be easier. Marcus reached across the table, taking Noah's small hand in his. "Ellie's not going anywhere. I promise." "But you and her are fighting." Sometimes people who care about each other fight. It doesn't mean they stop caring. It means they're trying to figure out how to care better. Noah considered this, his young mind working through concepts that shouldn't be his burden. "Mommy used to say that love is choosing someone every day, even on hard days." Sarah's words, spoken years ago in a context Marcus couldn't remember, now delivered by their son like a message from beyond. The irony wasn't lost on him, his late wife teaching him how to navigate his second marriage. Your mom was right. And you know what? Tomorrow, I'm going to choose better. That night, after putting Noah to bed, Marcus sat on the apartment steps waiting for Elena's car to pull into the parking lot.
She arrived just after 9, exhaustion evident in the slope of her shoulders as she climbed out of the Camry. When she saw Marcus, she hesitated. "You didn't have to wait up." "Yeah, I did." Elena sat beside him, leaving careful space between them. The November air bit at their skin, but neither moved to go inside. "Noah thinks you're leaving." Elena's breath caught. "I would never, I know. But he's 5 and scared, and the adults in his life keep disappearing. So we need to figure this out. Not for us, for him." Elena nodded, wrapping her arms around herself against the cold. "What do you need from me?" "Honesty. Completely. No more secrets, no matter how good your intentions." "Okay." "And I need you to stop managing my life." Henderson mentioned partnership opportunities.
That was you, wasn't it? Elena's silence was confirmation enough.
"I know you're trying to help, but every time you solve a problem I didn't ask you to solve, it makes me feel like you think I can't handle my own life. Like I'm a project instead of a partner." "That's not how I see you." "Then prove it. Let me struggle. Let me fail. Let me be a man who makes his own way, even if it's slower and harder than the path you could buy me." Elena turned to face him, vulnerability naked in her expression. "I've spent 12 years solving problems with money. It's the only tool I know how to use anymore. Teaching me to stop? That's like asking you to stop fixing engines. It's who I am." "Then learn new tools, because money can't fix this." The words hung between them, neither accusation nor ultimatum, just truth. Elena stood, offering her hand to Marcus. "Come inside. It's freezing out here." Marcus took her hand and let her pull him up.
They climbed the stairs together, and for the first time since the revelation, the silence between them didn't feel like a chasm. The following weeks brought an uneasy truce. Elena made deliberate efforts to separate her work life from home. She stopped taking calls during dinner, left her laptop in the car some nights, made it to Noah's bedtime stories 4 nights out of 7. Marcus, in turn, tried to quiet the voice that questioned her every kindness, searching for hidden agendas in simple gestures. They weren't healed, but they were trying. Then Derek Ashford showed up at Henderson's on a Tuesday morning, desperation written in every line of his face. Marcus was elbow deep in an engine bay when Derek's shadow fell across the hood. "We need to talk." "Nothing to discuss. I have information you need to hear." Marcus straightened, wiping his hands on a rag blackened with grease. Derek looked nothing like the polished investor who'd stolen Cassandra. His suit was wrinkled, stubble darkened his jaw, and his eyes held the manic energy of a man watching his world collapse. "Make it quick." Derek pulled out a folder, thrusting it at Marcus. "Your wife isn't who you think she is." "I know exactly who she is." "Do you?" "Because these documents tell a different story." Against his better judgment, Marcus opened the folder. Inside were financial records, news articles, legal documents, a dossier on Elena Morgan compiled by someone with resources and motivation. His eyes caught on a highlighted passage in a Forbes article. "Elena Morgan, CEO of Meridian Capital, has quietly acquired controlling interest in Ashford Development through shell companies. Sources suggest she's preparing a hostile takeover with plans to liquidate assets and terminate leadership." Marcus looked up at Derek, whose smile was bitter. "She's not just rich, Marcus. She's ruthless, and she's destroying me piece by piece, probably as revenge for taking Cassandra. You think she married you out of love? She married you to look sympathetic,
to soften her image before crushing her enemies. The accusation should have been absurd, but seeds of doubt, once planted, grew in darkness. Why should I believe you? Because I have nothing left to lose. Ashford Development is bankrupt. I'm living in a studio apartment and driving a 15-year-old Honda. Meanwhile, your billionaire wife is playing house with you while dismantling my life. Derek's voice cracked. I'm not asking for sympathy, but you deserve to know what she's capable of. Marcus handed back the folder. You destroyed yourself, Derek. Elena just made sure you couldn't hurt anyone else on the way down. Is that what she told you? That she's some kind of hero? Derek laughed, the sound unhinged. Wake up, man. She's using you. And when she's done, you'll be just another casualty. Get out of my shop. Fine. But when you figure out I'm right, don't come crying to me. Derek left, but the folder remained on the workbench. Marcus told himself he wouldn't look at it again. He lasted until lunch break, then found himself in his truck, reading every page. The documents painted a picture of Elena he didn't want to believe, cold, calculating, using her wealth as a weapon. There were emails between Meridian executives discussing strategy for acquiring Ashford Development. Board meeting minutes where Elena's name appeared beside decisions to block Derek's financing. A paper trail that couldn't be denied. But context mattered. Derek had defrauded investors, lied about his financial position, built his empire on sand and other people's money. Elena hadn't attacked an innocent man. She'd shut down someone who was hurting people. Still, the revelation that she'd been actively dismantling Derek's business while sitting at their dinner table each night felt like another layer of deception. How much else was she hiding? What other moves was she making from the shadows, manipulating outcomes she deemed correct? That evening, Marcus confronted her. How long have you been taking apart Ashford Development? Elena looked up from the financial report she'd been reviewing, her face carefully neutral. 6 months? Since before we were married. And you didn't think I should know my wife was orchestrating someone's financial ruin? I was protecting innocent people from a con artist. Derek's investors lost millions because of his lies. Stopping him wasn't personal, it was necessary. But it became personal when he took Cassandra. Elena set down her papers. Maybe. I won't lie and say watching him fall didn't give me satisfaction, but that's not why I did it. Marcus paced the small living room, energy with nowhere to go. Do you understand how this looks? How it feels to discover that while you're teaching me to cook macaroni and cheese, you're crushing someone's business like it's nothing. It wasn't nothing. It was justice. Justice, Elena? Or revenge? The question hit harder than Marcus intended. Elena's composure cracked, hurt flashing across her face before she rebuilt her walls. I've made hard decisions in my career. Decisions that destroyed companies, ended jobs, ruined people who probably had families and dreams. That's what happens when you manage billions of dollars. Every choice has consequences. But I make those choices based on data, ethics, and protecting people who can't protect themselves, not revenge. Then why does it feel like you're playing chess with people's lives? Because sometimes that's what it takes to stop the people who would otherwise prey on the vulnerable. Marcus stopped pacing, turning to face her fully. And where do I fit in this game? Am I a piece you're moving, or a person you actually care about? Elena stood, closing the distance between them until they were inches apart. You're the only person in 12 years who's made me remember what it's like to be human instead of a machine. You and Noah, you're not pieces on a board. You're the reason I come home every night to this small apartment instead of my penthouse in Lodo. You're the reason I'm trying to be better.
You have a penthouse?
1,400 square feet, floor-to-ceiling windows, worth $3.2 million. And I haven't slept there in 4 months because I'd rather be here, in your 900-square-foot apartment with the leaky faucet and the neighbor who plays drums at midnight. The confession hung between them, and Marcus felt his anger deflate like a punctured tire. Why didn't you tell me about the penthouse? For the same reason I didn't tell you about everything else.
Because the moment you know the full scope of the gap between us, the moment you truly understand how different our worlds are, you'll either resent me or feel so inferior it'll destroy us. And I can't lose this, Marcus. I can't lose you and Noah. Marcus reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. The gesture was automatic, intimate, revealing feelings he hadn't admitted even to himself. You can't lose something you never fully let yourself have. And you can't build something real on a foundation of fear. Elena's eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. I don't know how to do this. How to be vulnerable. How to trust that someone won't use my weaknesses against me. You start by telling the truth, even when it's terrifying. Especially when it's terrifying. And if the truth pushes you away, then at least we'll know we tried. They stood in the quiet apartment, the weight of everything unsaid pressing down on them. Finally, Elena spoke. I have a board meeting next week, annual gala at the Brown Palace Hotel. It's the biggest event of the year. Investors, executives, politicians, everyone who matters in Denver's business community will be there. She took a shaky breath. I want you to come. See my world, meet the people I work with. No more hiding, no more secrets, just the truth, however ugly it might be. Marcus's first instinct was to refuse. Walking into a room full of billionaires and power brokers, standing beside Elena as the mechanic husband, it sounded like torture. But running from hard things had never solved anything. Will there be food? Because if I'm going to be uncomfortable, I should at least eat well. Elena's laugh was surprised and genuine. The best food you've ever tasted. Then I'll need to borrow a suit. The one I have is 8 years old and smells like mothballs. I'll handle it. No. Marcus caught her hand. I'll handle it. I'll borrow something from Jake or rent one, but thank you. The distinction was important, and Elena understood. She squeezed his hand. Okay. That night, after Elena had gone to her makeshift room, Marcus lay in bed thinking about the gala. The idea of walking into that world, being measured and judged by people who'd dismiss him with a glance, made his stomach churn. But Elena had asked him to be brave, to see the full truth of who she was. The least he could do was match her courage. The week leading up to the gala passed in a blur of nervous preparation. Jake loaned Marcus a suit that fit reasonably well after some alterations from a tailor in Capitol Hill. Noah helped Marcus practice tying a proper Windsor knot, the boy's small fingers surprisingly deft. You look handsome, Daddy. I look like I'm playing dress-up. Ellie will think you're handsome. The simple certainty in his son's voice made Marcus smile despite his anxiety. On the night of the gala, Marcus stood in front of the bathroom mirror, adjusting his tie for the 10th time. The man staring back at him was a stranger, clean-shaven, hair-combed, wearing clothes that cost more than his usual wardrobe combined. But underneath the costume, he was still the same guy who spent his days covered in grease, whose hands bore permanent stains from years of manual labor. Elena emerged from her room transformed. The simple blazers and slacks had been replaced by a floor-length emerald gown that probably cost more than his truck. Her hair was styled in an elegant updo, subtle makeup highlighting features he thought beautiful in their natural state. She looked like she'd stepped out of a magazine, confident, powerful, untouchable. "You look incredible," Marcus managed. "So do you." Elena studied him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "Ready?" "No. But let's go anyway." They drove to the Brown Palace Hotel in Elena's Camry, the disconnect between the modest car and their formal attire almost funny. Marcus expected her to have a limousine, a driver, all the trappings of wealth. Instead, she parallel parked on the street like anyone else. "I could have upgraded the car," she admitted, reading his thoughts. "But this one runs fine. Seems wasteful to replace something that still works." "You're a weird billionaire." "The weirdest." The Brown Palace Hotel's lobby took Marcus's breath away. Crystal chandeliers the size of small cars hung from ceilings painted with gold leaf. Men in tuxedos and women in designer gowns clustered in groups, their laughter echoing off marble floors. Marcus felt every eye turn toward them as they entered, felt the weight of judgment assessing his borrowed suit, his calloused hands, his lack of pedigree. Elena took his arm, her grip firm. "Breathe. You belong here as much as anyone." "I really don't. You belong because I say you do. And in this room, my word carries weight." They moved through the crowd, Elena stopping to greet various people, executives, investors, politicians whose faces Marcus recognized from news broadcasts. Each introduction was the same. "This is my husband, Marcus Webb." Some people responded with polite interest. Others couldn't quite hide their surprise or disdain. One older man in a tuxedo that probably cost more than Marcus's rent actually looked him up and down like livestock at auction. "Webb, what do you do?" "I manage an auto repair shop." "How practical." The word dripped with condescension. Elena's grip on Marcus's arm tightened, but before she could respond, Marcus smiled. "Someone's got to keep the cars running, including yours, probably." The man blinked, thrown by the directness, then moved on without another word. "I'm going to hate tonight, aren't I?" Marcus whispered. "Probably. But I'll make it up to you." They found their table as dinner began. Marcus was seated between Elena and a woman who introduced herself as Victoria Chen, CFO of a tech startup Meridian had funded. She was kind enough not to interrogate Marcus about his background, instead talking about her company's work in renewable energy. He found himself actually interested, asking questions about the technology, and Victoria seemed genuinely pleased by his curiosity. Across the table, a man Marcus recognized as a city councilman was deep in conversation with Adam Castellano. Marcus watched Elena's ex-fiancé, trying to reconcile this polished professional with the man who'd broken Elena's heart. Adam caught him looking and raised his glass in a small salute that might have been respect or mockery. Marcus couldn't tell. Dinner ended and the program began. Various executives gave speeches about market trends and investment strategies. Marcus understood maybe half of what they said. The language of high finance is foreign as another tongue. But when the MC called Elena's name, he sat straighter, paying attention. Elena walked to the podium with the confidence of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. The room quieted, all eyes on her. 15 years ago, my father, George Morgan, died and left me $5 million and a challenge. He said, "Prove that my daughter is as capable as any son." At 27, with no experience and everyone expecting me to fail, I took that money and built Meridian Capital. Her voice carried through the ballroom, strong and clear. Today we manage $8.4 billion in assets. We funded 120 companies, created 15,000 jobs, returned 340% to our investors. But those numbers, impressive as they are aren't what defines success. Elena paused, her eyes scanning the crowd until they found Marcus.
Recently, I've learned that true wealth isn't measured in dollars or returns on investment. It's measured in the people who stand beside you, not because of what you can give them, but because of who you are. It's measured in moments, a child's laughter, a partner's support, the courage to be vulnerable when vulnerability feels like weakness. Marcus felt his throat tighten as Elena continued. The business world teaches us to see relationships as transactions, people as assets or liabilities. But the most important lesson I've learned this year is that some things can't be bought, leveraged, or optimized. Some things you can only earn through honesty, patience, and the willingness to risk your heart. The room erupted in applause. Elena returned to her seat, her cheeks flushed. Marcus leaned close. That was about us, wasn't it? Every word. Before Marcus could respond, Derek Ashford stood up from a table across the room. He swayed slightly, drunk or desperate, maybe both. Beautiful speech, Elena. But let's talk about honesty. His voice cut through the applause, loud enough to carry. Does everyone here know that Denver's most respected CEO is married to a mechanic? That she's living in a tiny apartment, playing house, while running a multi-billion-dollar company? Gasps rippled through the crowd. Marcus felt his face burning, but Elena remained composed. Yes, Derek, I'm married. My husband is Marcus Webb, and yes, he manages an auto repair shop. What's your point? My point is that you're running a con, pretending to be relatable, sympathetic, while you destroy anyone who gets in your way. You took everything from me, my company, my reputation, my future, and you did it while pretending to be some kind of hero. Elena stood, her voice calm but carrying steel underneath. I didn't take anything from you, Derek. You destroyed yourself through fraud, misrepresentation, and hurting innocent investors. Meridian simply made sure you couldn't hurt anyone else.
You're a hypocrite! You preach about vulnerability and honesty while hiding behind lies.
The room had gone deathly quiet. Marcus watched Elena, saw her weighing her response, and realized she was about to defend herself by exposing their entire story. He couldn't let her do that. Couldn't let her vulnerability become ammunition for people like Derek. Marcus stood, every eye in the room swinging toward him. You want to talk about honesty? Fine. Let's be honest. Elena reached for his hand, but Marcus gently pulled away. He needed to do this alone. 4 months ago, I was humiliated at my own engagement party. The woman I planned to marry announced she'd found someone better, someone with money and status. I became the guy everyone pitied, the mechanic who wasn't good enough. His voice carried through the silent ballroom. Elena offered me a way out, a marriage of convenience that would let me save face and give my son some stability. I agreed because I was desperate and hurt. And for months, I thought that's all it was, an arrangement between two lonely people. Marcus looked at Elena, finding strength in her eyes. Then I found out my wife wasn't just comfortable. She was a billionaire, the CEO of one of the most successful companies in Colorado. And yeah, I was angry. Felt lied to, manipulated. Felt like I'd been played by someone way out of my league. Murmurs started, but Marcus kept going. But here's what Derek and people like him don't understand. Elena didn't marry me to look good. She married me because she was tired of people seeing her bank account instead of her. She wanted someone to care about who she was, not what she had. And I gave her that, not because I'm special, but because I didn't know enough to want anything else. He turned back to the crowd, his borrowed suit suddenly irrelevant. I don't fit in this room.
I don't speak your language or understand your world, but I know how to love someone for who they are, not what they can give me. And if that makes me a con artist, then I guess I'm guilty. Marcus looked at Derek, who'd gone pale. You lost everything because you treated people like stepping stones. Elena chose me because I treated her like a person. That's not a con. That's called being human. The silence that followed stretched for heartbeats. Then someone started clapping. Victoria Chen, the CFO who'd sat beside Marcus at dinner. Another person joined, then another, until half the room was applauding. The other half looked uncomfortable, probably questioning whether their own relationships were built on genuine connection or calculated advantage. Elena stood and took Marcus's hand, pulling him close. Thank you. For what? For reminding me why I fell in love with you. The words hung in the air between them, neither of them quite ready to acknowledge what she'd just admitted. But Marcus felt something shift in his chest, a door opening that he'd kept locked since Sarah died. Maybe, just maybe, it was time to risk his heart again.